Hello, and welcome to the How2Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hey, everybody, I'm Ron Skelton. I'm here today with Derricks, and he is a copywriter, an author, and of all interesting things we're going to talk about shortly here. You're actually a goat farmer too, right?
Yes.
I've got a connection to that one. That's going to be a fun one. So I always like to start off by just letting you tell your story. How did you go from, I'm guessing country boy, because you do some goat farming, to having that trophy behind your wall to be, I guess you've done it a couple times, to have that 2 Comma Club award. So let's hear about you.
Yeah, I mean, probably not much different story than yours or anybody else listening or watching, but grew up on a small dairy farm in Wisconsin, and when I was 8 years old, I was milking a cow, and I realized there's got to be a better way than to make money than this. So that inspired me to kind of play around on the internet, trying to figure out how to make money on the internet. Pretty soon, within a couple of years, I was making the same $20 spending an hour on the internet as I would have by milking a cow. And I thought, dang, this is a lot better. So lifelong pursuit of just making it on the internet. And I've been blessed along the way. And I guess here I am. And now I'm adding the goats back in after all these years.
It's interesting is I grew up the same way on a small pecan grove, 26-acre pecan grove, and we had goats and chickens and cows, and we didn't milk the cows or anything. We got milk from the neighbor. But I started my entrepreneurial spirit off the same way. I was young, and I wanted to work for my father. He actually had a painting remodel business. He told me I was too young, so I grabbed the push mower and pushed it 5.5 miles one way into town and started mowing lawns. When he seen I'd really work, and I had the work ethic, I automatically got to become part of his. So,
That's awesome.
So you went from small country guy, to a business owner. Tell us a little bit what you've done in the business space. I kind of know your story because I did the research and we're in the same communities. But tell our listeners kind of where you're at and a little bit about your journey.
So lots of things have happened. So for the most part, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've never really had a job. So all throughout high school, I was an entrepreneur. I had a t-shirt company. I was selling t-shirts at parties. And then in college, I had a company I ran out of my dorm room where I had a product for that wrapped cleats. Ended up selling that company because I was playing college football, and the RAs and the administration kind of came to notice that there were lots and lots of boxes being shipped out of my dorm room, and they put the kibosh on that. So that was my first exit. Didn't even know what I was doing, but sold my first company when I was like 19 years old. Then a couple years later, got back into it. While I was in college, I was started doing copywriting and launched my freelance sort of business. And by my senior year in college, I was making $336,000, which is more than the university president. Yet I was still getting lectured by my marketing professor that I wouldn't make it in the real world because I didn't take his class seriously. And then fast forward after college, I just kept doubling down, just grinding and learning, reading, joining groups, joining masterminds, and just putting everything I could into my brain. Invested well over $250,000 outside of college. That was not helpful, on my own self-education. And now, 10, 12 years later, I have a successful 7-figure company. We do a ton of things, won a lot of awards, been featured on many things. Never thought any of this was possible. A lot of people along the way told me I couldn't, but thankfully here I am. And I'm sure any of you that are along that path, either behind me or where I'm at or ahead of me, all too well. So that's kind of, I guess, a quick version of where I've been and where I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's interesting is, the whole story about like having a business through college. And I went to the military to pay for my college, and I had a business on the side. and you were a step ahead of me because I never realized I could sell them. So when I got stationed from one place to the other, I would try to find a couple guys that could run it, turn it over to it. It would fizzle out after I left. And I got to the new base, the new station. I'd be, okay, what am I going to do here? Right. And, I attribute it to my ADD. It's usually something different than I did at the last place because I did that. It worked. I made some money. It was fun. Let's go find something new to do. But I get the entrepreneur spirit. It's like that wanting to create, not wanting to just to do that. It's one of the things you created multiple books. I was reading that one of your books. That's kind of how I found. I read a story about you wrote a book, and then Goat Farmer writes book that sells for $2,500 a copy or something, and that was impressive. Kind of tell us that story, and then we're gonna hear about the new book you have out today too.
Awesome, so. Thank you. Yeah, so that goes to a lot of the things that people see. They see the awards on the wall, they see whatever. What they don't see is sort of the things that led up to it, the gory details, I call it. So that book, and here's the deal. If you guys didn't catch that, Ronald just said that Dana sold a book for $2,500. And if that's not, like launching your BS meter, then it should. So here's how that happened. And a lot of people don't believe it, and that's fine. I don't care. I was a freelance copywriter, like I said, and I became very, very in demand, and I had very bad organization and time management skills. So I ended up basically overdoing it and getting burnt out. And it got to the point where I could remember being a young adult, and the opportunity cost to go to a movie on a weeknight to me wasn't worth it because I could make $1,000 in that 2-hour span. So it became kind of unhealthy. So I realized I got to scale this. Like, I can't trade time for dollars anymore. So what I did was I thought to myself, okay, well, I got 10 people a week that want to work with me. I can only work with maybe 2 or 3. What can I do for the other 7? Well, I knew how to write. So I'm like, why don't I just write a book instead of, catching a fish for these people? Why don't I write a book that teaches them how to fish? And then they can go and, do it. So I was charging. Here's the problem. There was disparity. So I wrote the book, and it was like awesome. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm charging $10,000 to do this for them. Why in the heck would I charge them $20 for the book that teaches them how to do it, right? So I very quickly realized that the publishing industry is like totally out, because every single thing that, every book out there is priced at like $20. Why is that? No idea, because publishers are not good at what they do. So the point is it's not correlated value. Right. So I thought to myself, well, why would I sell that book for that price? So anyway, I started selling it for $100 a copy. It sold like crazy. So I like, oh, how high can I go? 200, kept going, 300, 400, 500, all the way up to $2,500. I found is about, the top end. And the best part, the best part as an author, not only are the margins phenomenal and it's scalable, right? But the number one problem as an author, when somebody buys your book, typically they just don't read it, right? Or it gets thrown in the pile, the to read pile, 17 deep. Now why is that? They don't have enough pain. When people bought my book for $2,500, guess what they did? They camped out at the mailbox. like they took the day off to read the thing when it showed up. So with that being said, that's kind of how that was inspired and born, and the rest is history.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. I started to think, well, maybe I need a $2,500 book. I've got a bookshelf that's probably worth a couple $100,000 like you do. It's got all the courses I've taken over the years, right? And, I've studied a little copywriting. That's kind of why we were in the same circles. I studied under Dan Kennedy for a while, was in his inner circle, and big fan. And I just had a phone interview with Lawton Childs a few weeks ago. Had him review a piece I did. He tore it apart. I write. I joke. It's like the only copy I ever write is when I absolutely have to. And and if you're not in practice and doing it regularly, I ended up talking more about our business than I was their pain or suffering. So, but tell us, you got a new book out, right? And I'm actually working on a book. I say that I've been working on it for 2.5 years. The book I'm working on is called Get Rich Quick My Ass. I'm a real estate investor, so it's a lot about these the myth of overnight success. There's a lot of it's always a tough way to make an easy living kind of a story. from their title, and I haven't got the book yet, but from your title, it sounds like you're kind of in that realm. Like, I'm going to tell you the truth about a business. So tell us about the book. What is it called, and how do people get it?
Yeah, so actually, I think I always lose count. There's 12 books that I've published. Um, I have basically accidentally stumbled across a way to get books written in days instead of years. And I'll just spare you the whole thing. But with that being said, my latest book is called The Truth About Business. Uh, it is essentially the playbook that all the large giant companies use to maximize their revenue. It's really broken down formulaically. It shows you how to set up your company the way that they do. It shows you all the things that are happening behind the scenes, which is where the real money is made. And this is something that took me 12 years to finally figure out. And I don't know why, but like no one teaches it. So, it took me the $250,000 in education plus all those nights at sitting at masterminds until 3 in the morning, just mapping things out and just sitting in with the room with amazing people. So with that, it's called The Truth About Business. I have a copy here. It's ruffling feathers. There are people that are not happy that it was released because it kind of exposes exactly how they play the game. But now it's time for you, all of you, to be able to play the game of business the way that the big top 1% do.
It's interesting is, I've had quite a few businesses myself, and I grow them all up, grow them to a certain point. And, the history was I get frustrated with them, sell them off, or, transfer the asset to a business partner, and go do something else. Right. And I got into the acquisitions and mergers world and realized that that's how a lot of these companies actually grow. They grow through acquisition. They buy competitors, they buy suppliers, they buy revenue to drive their revenue up. Do you cover that at all inside of the book, or any type of like that model?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say my book, so The Truth About Business kind of takes a step back and it gives you the whole kind of big picture because like we kind of understand intellectually what acquisitions are and how they make sense for growth, and they are 100% how these companies become massive. However, a lot of people don't understand where and who, right? That's the problem. It's like, and you don't want to mess that up, right? So if you can carve out, and there's like even tools in there that shows you exactly what this whole thing should look like for you. Once that's carved out, then it becomes clear exactly who you're going after, and then even better is like who's the end target to acquire you. Like what's your finish line look like? So definitely a lot of acquisition minded stuff in there.
Awesome. Awesome. So how does somebody find the book, and how do people reach out to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so probably the best way is to go to d100.com. So that's the letter D100.com. I've got tons of resources there. We've got so many things that are awesome. So that's kind of our place that we just send everybody.
Awesome. So I see a lot of videos out there. You've worked beside, or at least been on picture and video with Russell. You've been on the stage at that. Tell us about about that side of what you do. Going out and if somebody wanted you to come teach at their event, or are you still doing stage presence, presentations and stuff?
Uh, I've kind of slowed down. I've got two little ones, 3 years old and 6 months old, so that's kind of gotten crazy. Along with 5 goats, 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a fish. So leaving is harder than it used to be. But yeah, no, I always entertain the thought of that. I prefer to have people come out here to my office in Wisconsin. We do daily consulting, we do Zoom remote consulting, we do all sorts of fun stuff. Host events from time to time, but yeah, I'm a little harder rooted now.
So I'm going to disclose something here. I don't think I've ever shared outside of my immediate family. So I grew up, my family, my grandmother was a goat farmer. She actually she did registered pygmy goats and fainter goats. And my job was to go with her on all the shows and show her goats. So I actually was a goat shower. I would walk the little goats around and get his little stance right. And, she had these permanent grand champions and stuff that she had, won all these awards with. Redbud Acres, she's gone now, and that farm's no longer. But Redbud Acres was, Redbud 8 Acres was, well known in the pygmy goat world. But if any photos of her winning awards and stuff, or that little dude showing the goats was me. So
Oh, that's amazing! Wow.
I don't tell many people that, but I figured you'd get a good kick out of it.
I love it, and you probably get a kick out of then. It's almost I don't do it anymore because the herd gets too big. But I'm a kind of I like to go to the county fair and I like to rescue. I'll bid and try and I'll try to win the grand champion, and then bring him to the farm so he doesn't get eaten.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So do they eat the goats? I guess the meat goats they would. So I've had it once before. So actually on Christmas one day, I had it. One of the families I've spent Christmas with had made it, barbecued with teriyaki. I just didn't think it tasted any different than any other really sweet meat at the time. But I think that's the only time I ate it. Only time I've knowingly eaten it. So.
Well, I will say that gyros are pretty good. I usually opt for not a goat one, but I've had it. Can't say I haven't.
Cool. So you have kids too. So I have a 3-year-old and I have a 5-year-old now. They're getting old, and 10-year-old. So what do they think about Daddy being an entrepreneur? Are they got the entrepreneur spirit yet? So my kids, a few weeks ago, my kids opened a library and started trying to rent me books. So
Really?
I'm always, yeah.
That's awesome. How does that work?
They took all their books. They actually, charged me $0.25 to read one of them, and then I said, "Well, I'll pay you $1 if you'll read it to me." So they have a book rental thing, and then if they read the book to me, or read along with me. My 5-year-old doesn't read yet; she's picking up some words. But if they'll sit there with me when I read it, I pay more for the books. But I totally encourage anything that's entrepreneurial.
Absolutely.
So,
it's kind of tough. It's too early to tell. But I will say for myself, growing up as an entrepreneur, my parents were not entrepreneurial. My mom worked for the federal government for 30 plus years. My dad was a teacher, and along with a farmer. And it wasn't until I was almost graduating college that I finally surrounded myself with other entrepreneurs. Because I'll tell you this: if you can relate to this, anyone listening or watching, you're not alone. It doesn't matter. Like if you went through the school system, you went to college, did any of it, you probably got the entrepreneurial spirit beat out of you, completely. That's what it's designed to do, really.
Yeah.
And so you're not alone. There were other kids in there that felt what you felt, and it's never too late. I can remember the first time I flew out to Boise to hang out with Russell in the mastermind, and it was so overwhelming that somebody came up to me. They saw how overwhelmed I was, and they said, "Dana, this is what happened." They created an analogy for me. They said, "Dana, you've been a penguin, your whole life, and you've been, walking around with walruses. They don't look like you, they don't act like you, they don't talk like you, think like you. They want to eat you, right? And finally, you're in a room of other penguins." And it was dead on. So with that being said, if you don't fit in, which I don't either, I can't go to my grocery store and fit in with anybody. Like that, it is what it is. I don't live in Austin, Texas. I don't have that type of thing, but you can get it, and you don't have to pay a ton. You don't have to join a mastermind if you don't, if you can't. I encourage it, but find your penguins. Okay, listening to this or watching this, these are your penguins. So I should say goats. I should change the story to goats. But, yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on it. You're not alone.
I'm a big believer. Surround yourself with just rock stars, people who are doing what you're doing, already done what you want to do, and your environment really matters. I still hang out with some of my local friends. I'm back here in Oklahoma. I've lived just about everywhere. I was in Dallas last year, and before COVID hit, I guess almost a year and a half ago now. And before that, before I moved back to Oklahoma, I lived in California for years and stuff. And if you're not around people, you'll tend to adapt to the people you are hanging out with. But you're talking about not fitting in. I get that, right? I'm sitting out there fishing on the weekend, and I'm on the phone with one of my friends trying to see if he wants to come out there. And he's like, "Well, what are you working on now?" And I was like, without thinking, I gave him the entrepreneurial story, right? I've got a group of people from all around the world. We're doing a $500 million roll up and buying marketing agencies all over the planet. And this guy, he's a great guy. I love him to pieces, but he puts up fence in the hot sun all day. And he's like, you're bullshitting me, right? And I'm like, no, I'm serious. He's like, how did you get into that? Like, would you got a master's degree? Does that do that? I was like, no, that actually kind of hinders the process, right? My MBA in marketing hurt me more than it helped me. So I'm a big believer in that too. I'm at 100% back up your story. Get around other entrepreneurs, and I'll even step above. Find entrepreneurs that are a step above you and willing to work with you, right? If they're 10 steps in front of you, you're gonna probably be a distraction to them unless they're running a course or something like that, which are great to go to. But if they're just a little ahead of you, I'd say if they're one figure ahead of you, if you're making, barely making 5 figures, get around people making 6. If you're making 6 figures, get around somebody making 7, right? But the guys making 8 figures aren't going to talk to you if you're not making 6 yet. They will, but it's too big of a gap, and it's been so long since they've been there. I honestly think that you really ought to be around people who are just right where you're trying to get to in your next year to year and a half. So
definitely well said. And I want to point something else out that we all just heard or saw live. So when you were talking to him while you were fishing, when your friend, showed that disbelief when you explained what you were doing, scale 1 to 10, 10 being like that would cause someone to completely rethink what they were doing and not do it. 1 out of 10, it just bounced right off like water off a duck's back. How much did that affect you?
Oh, I just bounces off me anymore. I've been doing this. I'll be 50 next year, and I'll be 50 in 6 months, right? And I've been an entrepreneur since I was probably 11 or 12, pushing mowers into town to mow lawns. Or, I would get those catalogs where you can, those things and the flyers where you sign up and you can sell junk to all your neighbors and then earn like summer trips and stuff. I sell the snot out of that stuff, right? So, and my neighbors were a quarter mile apart. So, when I tell my mom when I was going to ride around the block and sell something, it was a 17-mile block to go around. And there were only about 15 houses total in that 17 miles, right? And a lot of times you were greeted by somebody coming out with a shotgun trying to figure out where you're driving down their 200-yard driveway, and they said, realize you're a kid, and they leave you alone. Yeah. But it didn't deter me a bit. So somebody going, oh man, that's not right. You know what? I get that you don't get it, and I'm around people that do. And that, that's what you need. Because if you're constantly around people that don't believe in you, you're going to start believing in them. So I 100% get around people that, they believe in you because they've already done it, or they're on the same mission. They're trying to do it.
Well said. If you don't have, so the thing is too, is a lot of that comes from family, obviously close friends, but it's okay. Like if anyone needs to hear it, like it's okay. I give you permission to either not talk about that topic with them, which like I don't talk about stuff with my dad, this entrepreneur stuff, because he doesn't get it. Like he wants to support me, but he doesn't know how. It's okay. So I just don't talk about it with him. But I'll go to the even further and say that you can set boundaries with people. Like they think they are doing what's best for you and trying to protect you, but if anything, they're doing the opposite of what they should be, even though they're well intended. So.
Well, I set boundaries 100%. That gentleman knows that I kind of tolerate the, are you serious, for about 5 seconds. And after that, I was like, we changed the topic because I'm not going to, your disbelief doesn't have anything to do with my project plans, right? Yeah. So
just get out of the way.
Yeah. And it's not that they don't want to see you succeed. They just don't understand. So it's not like they're, a lot of people are, well, it's the crab mentality. They're trying to pull you back down. I don't believe that a bit. I don't believe in that. I believe that they don't understand, and they think you're going to get hurt or something. You're taking this huge risk, financial risk. If it doesn't work, you're going to be homeless. And I was like, yeah, you don't tell them. I own a few dozen houses too, so from the real estate background, I'll never be homeless. But they don't understand. So
right, and absolutely, and they're well intended, but as soon as you can start letting that bounce off you, the faster you're going to get to your goal. That's just the way it is.
Cool. So what is your mainstay right now? What are you doing? You got the book, you got your copyright. Are you copywriting again, or you just got your own courses and products? Or
yeah, actually right now I'm in the middle of kind of a crazy launch, the biggest launch I've ever done in my life. So I have basically shut everything down. I have like 5 courses, 3 challenges, 9, 10, 11 books in the space. And I've just thrown that all into one big bundle. And then I've spent a ton of my own liquid cash to develop a software that's called the Dream 100 software. It helps you to fast forward building relationships, Dream 100ing. If you have acquisition targets, you can build relationships with them quickly. And I've bundled that all together, and it's just this one thing called the Dream 100 Vault. So I have simplified my business. I've thrown everything, $49,000 worth of stuff, into one little place for one small fee, and that's what it is, the Dream 100 Vault.
Awesome. I'm a big fan of that Dream 100. Every business even in the acquisitions and mergers, I own a few different businesses, and I always have a spreadsheet going of like companies I'd like to bolt on. I do it from the acquisitions and mergers world. Like list 100 companies. In some spaces, it's a little tight. It's hard to get to 100, but like list as many as that 100 I can get to that I would like to bolt on, add on, or be part of, and then start building relationships for those. Because I honestly love that exercise because it gets you your awareness up. Like, if I didn't do that, if I seen an ad or a picture of the owner of one of the, I own a pest control company of all weird things. I bought it to employ some of my relatives, and but it's not big enough, and I want to buy a couple of the local ones. So I've got all them in that Dream 100 list. And then when there's an article or something post, if I notice, wait a second, I never noticed the owner of that's probably 65, 70. I need to reach out to them. They may want to retire. But without my list and knowing who I'm looking for, it probably just slipped my mind as, oh, it's just another, company. So I think that exercise of, going through and figuring out what your Dream 100 is, whether it's customers or acquisition targets and stuff, is a brilliant exercise. I've seen it in a couple of places. I'm glad that you've taken ownership of it and are helping people with that.
Yeah, well, 100%. And with acquisitions, like I can't imagine trying to do it without them. I don't know, you probably deploy many different strategies. I love the finding a company that's not for sale, that the owner's burnt out, or like you said, ready to retire. You give them a good price that's fair, and you don't have to come out of pocket. Like I love that deal. It's a win for everybody. And without the Dream 100, that deal doesn't really happen because you're just
Right.
like Dan Kennedy would say, it's just random acts, right? Whereas with the Dream 100, you're intentional about who you're trying to get, why you're trying to acquire them. You have a specific avatar in mind, and it makes these conversations so much better, and just it gets you where you want to be so much quicker.
And you hit something on the head. The avatar, or the persona, it actually really helps with like making sure your message lands with them, right? If you've got a group of 100 people, and you know that there's similarities among, you can actually create the marketing to where it just lands with who you're trying to speak to where if you're like, I want any business, there's a lot of guys in the acquisitions and merger space like, what are you looking to buy? And they're like, anything that's profitable. I was like, okay, well, how do you market to that? Are you PepsiCo? Do you get $50 million to throw at the next campaign? And like, no. And I was like, well, then you probably get a little more specific because just casting a wide net also grabs rocks and weeds and whatever else happens to be in the water. So,
And if there's not congruency, I mean, it's almost like you just bought a distraction, right? So that's why that book, it's so much better when you have the picture of it. But I think the other piece of it, there's so many layers to it. Now, if you have a list, it doesn't have to be 100, but let's say it's 20 in a local town for you with a pest control company. All of a sudden you've got 19 other people that you can now dangle over this person's head. Okay, if you don't take the deal, that's fine. We're going right next door to the competitor. They're the next phone call. And then all of a sudden you have all this leverage because why? You've taken the time to actually think through a campaign and a strategy.
Right. Cool. So one of my favorite questions I always ask is, I've asked a bunch of questions. We've talked about a lot of things. What should have I asked? Is there something like man, I really hope he asked me this question while we're on the call?
Wow. I've never been asked that. That's a good one. I would say, I don't know. I'm always a fan. This is not so much you should have asked. I just think about myself and what I like to ask. And I like to ask about like, if you could do something over like something specific, like if you could have launched or if you could have acquired a company in whatever space in the last 5 years, what would it have been? Something like that.
So what would be your company if you could go out right now and buy a company and it would just add to your, like, just it would grow your business if you could, what would be that company?
Software. I'll tell you
Software, huh?
what. Can you help me understand? Other than pretty much they're all pointless. And you said you've got an MBA, which good for you. That not many people follow through and get, so good for you. However, why did it take me? Maybe I'm just dumb or late or something. I don't know. Why did it take me 10 years to figure out that different like segments of different business categories have different exit multiples? Why did I build a business in a 3x multiple when I could have done one with 12? Why?
And if you turn it into a SaaS, so you got these guys that are crazy spending, 12, 15, 20x on software as a service companies, right? Yeah, I get that. I wasn't aware of it either. There's a whole other world out there, and as you start to attain wealth and get money in the bank, there's actually a private banking world that you're not even like. If you don't have 3 million liquid cash and $10 million worth of assets, you'll never even know it exists, right? And but like it's just you're introduced to things as you go along. And well, I thought you were going to ask me like a software, a SaaS question. I was like, that's the one vertical that I'm not even looking at because it's just their bidding wars going on right now. I take it there's two, the Amazon stores. They're like that too. Amazon, like anything that Amazon, businesses that sell all their stuff on Amazon stores. Those guys are getting crazy multiples, and that's just not what I'm after. So,
and that's why you didn't hear me say that I acquired one. I paid to get it developed because there's no deal in software right now unless you're selling.
It's there. Yeah, if you're selling. I have a friend who just bought in the acquisitions and mergers space. I'm trying to bring him in on our projects. If you're listening, kudos to you, Eric. Let's get you on our project. Anyway, but they bought a software as a service company on an earnout type of a situation, which is a strategic. Like we'll come in, we'll help you fix stuff. We'll take a percentage of it now, and we'll obtain the rest of it over time. And my first question is, to what multiple did they ask for? And luckily their company was in trouble because it wasn't as high as I was expecting. But yeah, if there's any recurring revenue inside of a software company, they're going to want a 15 to 30x, right? They're crazy, and makes you want to run out and create one, or I was teasing we're doing a mergers and acquisitions project around buying marketing firms. I was like, we need some MarTech that are software as a service because when we go to sell it, we just want to package the whole agency as a like, why would we do that? I said, well, because you might get 30x instead of 12, right? So
That's a pretty nice little way to 5x your exit.
Yeah. So I've studied a lot of the acquisition mergers gurus. I mentioned Dan Kennedy in the copyright. I've done Jeremy Harber's course, and that's a brilliant guy. He's out of London. He teaches it. Roland Fraser is the one that's real big on buying your suppliers, and you're growing. If you're a concrete plant, you buy the rebar manufacturer, you buy and you grow, and then you own your audience, right? And but the only thing they all have in common is switch it over to the highest multiple company if you can. So Roland's real big on buy 2 or 3 software as a service company SaaSes, and then now you're a SaaS and you sell it as a SaaS, right? You have this marketing component, or you have this manufacturing, but your real bread and butter is the software for the industry. So I have not tried it yet. I haven't done an exit with it yet, but it's a brilliant model for the person exiting.
Right. And I think I gotta fact check myself, but I believe the general rule of thumb, as long as you have 51% of your revenue is in that category, that'll fly, I believe.
Right.
But
Yeah. So that all depends on who the seller and who the buyer is and what they're looking for. If you can show where it's growing to that point, like it's got trajectory, you can still class it there. So
nice.
I've seen it happen. I know people that are doing exits and have done exits that they class it as a software as a service, and they're at 30% revenue, but it's because they just got it and it's like doubling every quarter, and within a year or two, it's going to overtake everything else they do. So
the whole thing got bundled up as a SaaS multiple.
Yeah.
That is the game I'm trying to play right there, my friend.
Yeah, that's a fun game to play. So I look forward to having you. I mean, I really appreciate you being here. I look forward to chatting with you again and kind of getting an update on what you got going on, maybe at a later date. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Tell people how to get a hold of you. We already said the D100.com. D is in duck 100.com. What else?
Yeah, I mean, if that thought of what I'm about to launch right now with my software plus the everything I've ever created in the Dream 100 Vault, just go to joindream100.com. That's joindream100.com. And you can get everything for one low fee a month, and you can join the journey with me.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody.